Welcome back. It's our Tri-State Office Furniture tweet of the day from Jeff Passan, who covers baseball very, very closely. Estimated current opening day payrolls: Seattle, $57 million. Cleveland, $46 million. Max Scherzer, $43 million. Pirates, $40 million. Baltimore, $37 million. So Max Scherzer is going to make more in 1 year, likely, than the entire Pirate roster, which leads us, Chris, real quick. I know we're going to talk a lot about Steelers, and we should, but they DFA'd Stephen Brault, which was a little surprising to me. They DFA'd Colin Moran. Again, I guess they couldn't get anything, but they signed Quintana, they gave Ben Gamble a new one-year deal, and they traded Stallings. We had talked about this earlier today on the radio about Stallings. He is a valuable piece that a lot of teams could utilize. But they got three players. I have no idea how good or bad they are, but this is basically keep on loading up picks, I suppose, and keep on doing it. And I would imagine Quintana is one of those guys that they're going to hope has a good beginning so they could trade him at the deadline.
I mean, I would presume so. There's no other reason for him to be here. Let me be more ominous about this. They brought on $6 million worth of new players, and then they got rid of roughly $6 million. So that's kind of an odd little wash there, a little accounting note. If they're doing this, if the Pirates are bringing this, and shipping guys out, what real reason for them is there to keep Brian Reynolds around and not try to shop him to the highest bidder? I know people are watching going, Chris, what are you suggesting? Well, what I'm suggesting is they're not keeping anybody else. I mean, keep Brian Hayes, I guess they'll keep, but why not try to get a huge return for Brian Reynolds now? It's very obvious that they are trying, or not trying, but they are going to field a team next year that's absolutely wretched. I mean, this is further down towards the studs. So your best asset might be at his max value. Maybe Brian Reynolds never has a season like he did last year again. I guess you might as well shop him, and I won't be surprised if they end up doing exactly that.
Because otherwise you're wasting his time and their time here with him. He's just going to play. He'll play well, although with no protection in the batting order, I'm not so sure what that means. But, yeah, it's going to be several years still. Let's go to the lines. I know a lot of people want to talk football, Chris. We'll get back to that. Anthony in Verona. Anthony, what's up?
Today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Roethlisberger, is he doing anything?
Well, listen, he's at his best when they have a defense playing well, a running game that's, doing its thing, so he could pick his, moments to make big plays. And he's done that in certain games this year, Chris. So I'm going to look at a list of problems right now. He's not at the top of the list of problems for me.
My very soft-spoken colleague at 93.7 The Fan, Paul Zeiss, I believe, wrote today in his usual understated style that maybe the bright spot from this game would be that the Steelers would realize that they really do need to rebuild. That is sort of the reality in the NFL when your quarterback isn't good enough anymore, and Ben Roethlisberger's not. I mean, I was a guy saying they shouldn't have brought him back this year. I thought that little stretch of play where he didn't turn the ball over was sort of people grasping at it and trying to make it more than it actually was. It was a good stretch of play, nothing more. But in a game like they played yesterday, Bob, vintage Ben sees them maybe go down 17-3 early and almost single-handedly tries to will them and maybe successfully wills them back in that football game. But he had nothing to offer them. And that pick six was the nail in the coffin. So to answer the caller's question there about Roethlisberger, no, not doing anything much here for this team, and that's why they really need to move on from him and a lot of other stuff this offseason.
Sean in Monroeville joins us right now on the Borders and Borders hotline. Hey, Sean.
Hey, how you doing?
What's up?
Hey, it's not only Bush, it's that Edmonds, too. That strong safety, he's terrible. I was listening to Ryan Clark today, and Ryan Clark was right when he said Mika Fitzpatrick cannot be a playmaker. He's always, every time you look, he's always making the last tackle.
He's trying to cover up for guys who should be making tackles before they ever do. And that takes him out of his position of strength. And Devin Bush is just, we've talked so much about Devin Bush, Chris. I don't know what else there is to say other than if they play him, you'd have to ask the question why. Why? You mentioned, Spillane's healthy. Even if Spillane isn't healthy, Marcus Allen has played that position before. Can he be any worse than what we've seen from Devin Bush?
You ask why? Politics. They spent a bunch to trade up to get him.
Yeah, but that shouldn't resonate in the locker room, though. If that's the reason, people in the locker room would say, wait a minute, is that what matters here? Or is it about performance to help us try to win?
I think guys want it in a perfect world to be about performance, but I also think that most of the players in there, whether they like it or not, and the answer is probably not, know the politics of the NFL far better than we ever could. I don't think it's any secret that Ryan Clark, who was a throwback type of player who could have played on the 70s Steelers in that harder-hitting era. He was a guy that wanted to nuke people out there, face mask to face mask. I don't think it's any secret that a guy like that, an undrafted player who scratched and clawed for everything he got in the NFL, is a little tired of watching a defense comprised mainly of first-round picks do very little. Like, I don't blame Ryan Clark for being furious. I think he said, every syllable he said about the Steelers was true, and I don't really see there being a lot of improvement on the way. What have you seen, Bob, from Devin Bush to make you think it's going to be different?
Nothing.
To the caller's point, what have you seen from Terrell Edmonds? I mean, there's a situation where it's a guy who they should never have drafted in that spot in the first place. He was a 2-round reach in most people's estimation, and he's proven those people correct. Because if he was drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, I'd say, he's having an okay career. When he's a first-round pick, it looks doubly bad.
And their corners, all right, Hayden is out. So there's one injury, and all of a sudden, now you have 2 guys. James Pierre, now he was targeted 6 times, 5 completions, a touchdown. T. Higgins goes over him. I mean, at some point, listen, those guys shouldn't be playing a lot. And because they are, you're seeing all the flaws that come with those kinds of games. Look at all the other guys they got lining up out there, Chris. There's a lot of guys who don't deserve to be, starting. Chris Wormley's a nice depth player. He shouldn't be starting, but he has to.
They got nothing. Listen, if there's one thing I'm going to be very tired of hearing from now on, it's when people who do not cover the team but follow the team ardently insist, based on very little evidence, that so-and-so is going to be a diamond-in-the-rough player. Maybe because one person saw something jump out at practice and they figured, well, that's something to seize on. I heard enough James Pierre is a diamond-in-the-rough stories this offseason to beat the band. Are you kidding me? And I really respect Louis Riddick's acumen as a personnel guy, but he said he's a future superstar? Excuse me?
Yeah, I heard that
in the
too.
CFL, Louis? In the CFL? I mean, T. Higgins, that was big brother versus little brother in the corner of the end zone. He bounced off him like he wasn't even there. I mean, come on. That's embarrassing, and they've got no depth anywhere, no talent really outside of a handful of superstars on that side.
Makes you think back at the offseason if they should have made a different strategy to try to retain Mike Hilton and Steven Nelson, both those guys. Money became an issue.
Arrogant.
There were ways
Totally
around
arrogant.
that. There were ways around that. They could have shed some other veteran guys. But they chose not to.
Like maybe don't bring Juju back to make your offense happy.
Or
the
Derek
fact
Watt.
that they did not.
I mean,
right,
all due respect to his
exactly.
special teams, he's a great special. But $3.5 million for special teams, that's a little bit too much.
Or if you're gonna draft a tight end and you had your mind set on that, bye Eric Ebron. But they couldn't do that either. I mean, to me, Mike Hilton not even being tendered any kind of a serious offer whatsoever by the Steelers is just a huge indictment on them for arrogance, for misevaluating a guy. They clearly thought that they made Mike Hilton what he is, and that Mike Hilton was not some sort of unique talent that you try to hold on to, and they paid for it yesterday. I'm not saying the same thing to that extent with Steven Nelson, but they let go of a perfectly good corner because they just thought, we'll fill in with what we've got, and they are being disabused of that notion rather spectacularly here.
One other note, and don't comment until we take a break, but I want to throw this out, and it's about what's happening in coaching. We saw that Lincoln Riley heads to USC. He leaves Oklahoma, which is a really good program. I understand why if he doesn't think he can compete in the SEC, if that's how he believes. Matt Fortunata on Twitter, and this is interesting, Brian Kelly apparently is going to take the LSU job. So he writes, Kelly was asked if he ever would leave Notre Dame aside from retirement. His quote was, no. I mean, look, I think Mike Tomlin had the best line, right? Unless that fairy godmother comes by with that $250 million check, my wife would want to take it at first. I'd have to run it by her. Well, apparently there's some sort of check going by because he left Notre Dame to go with LSU. We'll talk more about that and get more calls on the way next right here. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, Pittsburgh Seed Up.